Hi everybody, my name is Cindy Gay. I'm a rug hooking artist and teacher in Northwest Ohio, and I teach rug hookers how to hook. But more than that, I hope to guide them in a direction where they find their own style, their own way of creating art and making rugs. So that's my mission. How I do it is I teach here in my studio, not right now because of COVID, but that's where I did most of my teaching. Used to travel all over the country, but now I stay close to home. And now I do almost everything online in lessons like this and in more formal, more organized, more edited online lessons over at howtorughook.com. If you like my style of teaching, if you like what I have to say, pop on over there, see if there's a lesson there that will fit for you, and sign on up. Glad to have you here. Today's lesson is about cut sizes, and specifically, what are cut sizes? Okay, I've covered before how to cut wool and all that other kind of stuff, and I'll share a few links with you on that. But what are cut sizes? When someone says, oh, I use a 4, what exactly does that mean? So I have a little bit of a, here we go, a little bit of a demo to show you. This is just a simple piece of wool where I've pulled in various cut sizes, and then with a Sharpie marker, I wrote the size at the top. I use it when I'm teaching, when I'm working with the new student who I am asking, what cut size do you want to work with? And they give me this blank stare, like they don't know what I'm talking about, which if they're new, they probably don't know what I'm talking about. So this little cheat sheet is a way for me to kind of communicate to them. Now, every cut size up into an 8, this is important, it only works up to a number 8, is that many 32nds of an inch. Okay, I gotta shut a door. My husband left the door open. Are you off video?
What?
Are you off of internet video? Yeah. He said yeah, but I think he was watching. So I need all the internet juice so I can send you the best possible links. Come on, guys. And every time I shut a door, they think someone's coming. So we have to wait a minute for them to settle. And I forgot to shut the door earlier, didn't I? That was bad me. Okay, let's get started. Let's get back to where we were. So every cut size is a 32nd of an inch. So take an inch, divide it in half again. That's a 1/4 of an inch. Divide that in half, and then divide that in half again. That's a 32nd of an inch. So it's a very small increment. And it is amazing that as you advance through rug hooking, you're going to be able to look at something and go, okay, that's a 4, that's a 5, this is a 6, just by looking. Now that doesn't happen overnight. That'll come with time. But that said, there's such a slight difference between the cut sizes that when you buy a cutter, I recommend that you experiment a little bit with different cut sizes, find the cut size you like, and then buy 2 sizes up or 2 sizes down. If you tend to go smaller and like the smaller ones, and go that way. If you like the bigger ones, go the other way. So for instance, let's say you settle on a 6. That's where I usually start new rug hookers. It's an easy to pull up loop width. Then if they buy a 6 cutter blade, they'll often then buy an 8. Now, if they want a 4, okay, you see where I'm going. You can take the 8, and with small scissors, like my handy dandy favorite ones, you can cut that strip in half and get a number 4, right? So then you would hit 4, 6, and 8, and you probably are covered for most things that you want to see. So here's the 4, here's the 6, and here's the 8. When you look at the sizes in between, you really can't tell clearly if there's a difference until you get more experienced. Now for beginners, I don't recommend going into 8.5s or 9, and the dimensions on the 8.5 and 9 varies between the different cutting machine manufacturers. So it's not all the same. So an 8.5 you can see is much larger than an 8. So it's not 8.5 30 seconds. It's a totally different increment. And like I said, it can vary depending on the manufacturer of the cutter. So you're just going to have to verify that the width you want, and then check with your cutter manufacturer and find out what width that is, and then buy the appropriate blade. My favorite cut size, because I'm asked that constantly, I like a number 7. So I'm more of an odd number girl. I like 5, 7s, and then maybe 8.5s. Yeah. For beginners, I usually, like I said, I direct them toward the 6 with an option to go up in number 8, and they can always cut the 8.5 for a 4. You can live with 2 cutter blades, or you can do what I did and buy them all just because you want to have them. There are a few other cutter blades. Did I have that in there? There is a number 2. Okay, I should cut a piece of a number 2 and put a 2 in there. There is a number 2. You don't see many people actually hooking with a number 2. You certainly can, but I will use a 2, particularly in a landscape, as the final touches. When I'm going back in and I want to emphasize something, I'll add a little bit of number 2s. 2s are hard to cut manually with just scissors. So that's why I have a number 2 blade. A lot of manufacturers no longer make a number 2 blade, okay? Townsend, well, now it's Beeline. Now it's Beeline. They no longer make a number 2 cutter blade. And Larry Alt did a production run twice. I don't know if he'll do it again, but he's done it twice, where he had the number 2s manufactured, and you could buy one that way. I bought one back in the day when the Townsends were still making them. So I have 2 through 9. And that's all I need. I rarely use the 9. It's really big. So we're going to talk about why you use certain things when, but I want to show you another little reference that I have. I think this will do it. Okay, so this is a page from the Rug Cooking Journey. If you're a member of the Rug Cooking Journey, you have access to this page, and it's in the course called The Basics, and it's how to cut strips. And I have a podcast about cut sizes, and there's a link to that podcast here. I have another podcast on how to cut strips, and there's a link to that there. How to rip a new wool, how to organize your strips, and how to organize your wool. So that is one of the advantages of the Rug Cooking Journey, is that when you need a topic, there's a whole bunch of other stuff in there, stuff you might not have even known you needed. But one thing that's real important is that it has this page here with a PDF that you can print out and keep it. Now, what we can't see, let me see, experiment with this. I don't know if I make it bigger here, will it make it bigger? Yeah, it does. Okay. So let's look at these pros and cons. I don't know so much that they're pros and cons. It's that they're this and that. Okay, so if you are doing a wide width, the opposite is a narrow width, right? What happens with wide widths is they tend to look loopy, meaning you can actually see the loops, where with a narrow cut, it's more like velvet. Style-wise, wide cuts are usually done for primitive work, not always, and fine cut shaded is usually done with a fine cut, okay? As far as detail goes, you can get less detail with a wide cut and definitely more with a narrow cut. This one's important, the toll on your body. It is more physical work to pull up wide cuts than it is to pull up narrow cuts. That's why I start a beginner on a 6. Then I assess how they're doing, And if that's causing any kind of finger, wrist, arm, shoulder pain, I first check their technique and how they're sitting in their chair and look for issues that way. But if I don't see anything, I start dropping them down in cut size because that'll be easier on their body. The height, how tall you pull them up, generally you pull up a loop as wide or as high as it is wide. So wider loops are generally pulled up taller, so it gives you a fluffier rug. As far as wool use, because you pull it up a little bit higher, the wide cuts will use a little bit more wool. I find it's very negligible, but there is a difference. And with narrow cuts, you'll use less. Here's a big one. The decisions that are needed, because you have fewer places to put wide loops, because they take up so much space, you have fewer decisions to make. The problem is they have to be the right ones. So with a narrow cut, you've got more decisions, but you can screw up a couple and it's not going to throw your design off. So 6 one way, half a dozen another. The type of wool that is typically used, typically with a wide cut, textures are often used. In a narrow cut, it's usually solids, mainly because the textures back in the day could only be cut on a very wide cut. So you couldn't use a narrow cut for textures. Nowadays, that is kind of disappearing because the wools are getting nicer and nicer and a little bit more felted up, and you can cut smaller strips using texture. The problem is the smaller you cut a texture, the more it becomes a solid. So then it becomes, why bother? Why am I using a texture when if I cut it super small, it turns into a solid anyways? So that's the deal with that. Okay, so let me go back to here. I'll go back to my notes. What else did I wanted to show you? The other place to get that handout with the pros and cons that I was just reviewing is going to be on my podcast episode number 8. So if you were to search for something like Cindy Gay Podcast 8, it'll probably come up. And on that page, on my website, you're going to have a link to download that page. So you can get it even if you're not a member of the Rug Cooking Journey. You just got to know the ins and outs and where to find it. And that's what you would do. We talked about smaller cuts being easier on your body. They're also easier to blend because they're smaller dots of color. So, and that'll become more important on the lesson that I'm going to do on Friday. On Friday, I'm going to be talking about a technique that I use for shading. It has nothing to do with wool, nothing to do with loops, but it will put you light years ahead of someone who skips this step. So I hope I have you intrigued, and I'll see you on Friday for that. Now, as far as deciding what cut strip to use, it is handy if you have something like this. And then what I'll typically do is fold it so I can see just this edge, and then lay the strip on your pattern. Does that fit? If it doesn't fit, if it's way outside the line on both sides, then you know you need to go down in cut size. That's one of the easiest ways to check your pattern too, sort of give it a test to see if it's hookable. Is it drawn large enough that you can get even the smallest strip sizes in there? Some are not. Some are drawn in such a way that the pattern is virtually unhookable. And you can prove that because no one has ever hooked that pattern. Mixing cut sizes is not only okay, I think it's preferable. I think you get a better look when you have multiple cut sizes. My rug, the Village of Pemberville, I'll often have people go, gosh, there's so much detail. Is that hooked in a 2? No, it's hooked in everything from an 8, and there are some 2s, but they were pulled in after the fact. The bulk of the rug is probably 6s and 7s. It's just all about making sure you have the right wool and that the wool does all the work for you. right? If you've got that, you don't need the teeny tiny cut sizes to get the detail. Now, you can cut by hand, and is it okay if you don't know that this strip is a 6 or a 7 or an 8? Yes, it's fine. You don't need to know the cut size to hook it, right? You can cut it and then simply pull it in, and everything is going to be just fine. So it's not important that you need to know what cut size it is. And if someone asks, goes, I don't know, what do you think? Let them look at it and let them tell you what cut size they think you used, right? Let's see what the questions are. Monica says, is there a golden rule for cutting? I'm not sure what you're asking, Monica. If you want to ask that again, ask it again so that so it'll make more sense. Patricia says the pencil pouch. Oh, I always forget it's here because it's sitting on the corner. This is my newest pencil pouch. It's completed except for a handle. It's going to be a purse. But right now I got tools. There we go. Got a couple hooks and stuff in there. This pattern is now inside the pencil pouch course, along with several other ones. I thought it was going to take me half a day. It did take a half day. It took 2.5 days to get all those patterns on there. It was a technical issue. And I finally got it. So all the patterns that I've been wanting to post to the pencil pouch purse are now there. If you are a past member of that course, like all my stuff, if you are already there, you will get it also. Just go in, log in, and there it'll be. Okay. Sherry says, on the size 3 cuts, I cut some to test, and they look like they may shred to use an outline on flower petals. I got the wool from W. Cushing a while ago. The wool I choose seems thin. Yeah. You got to be careful where you get the wool from, particularly if you are on the smaller cut size. Textures are often an issue, but I know a lot of vendors, because of the price, are branching off and buying from some of the vendors who are making like clothing wool. It's still 100%, but not all 100% wool is created equal. That said, would I hook with recycled wool now that I have experienced wool woven specifically for rug hooking? And the answer is an emphatic no. It's coarse, it's loose, some of it washes up funny. Some is fine. Plus I have that whole risk of bringing in cloth moths. So that's something that I choose to simply avoid. I did dabble and experiment like everyone else has, buying a little bit maybe from Pendleton or maybe a little bit from, what's that other company? Right on the tip of my tongue. I think it's in Pennsylvania. Their wool is that scratchy, typical what you think of as nasty, scratchy wool. And I bought it once only because the other stuff was held up in customs and nobody had wool. I'll think of it at the last minute, but right now I can't think of it. But I stick with, if I want a solid, Door Mill is still the best party in town, and that's where I go from. You can always ask when you're buying it from someone else like me. You can ask, where do you get your wool from? Okay, and I'd be careful. Just because you might be getting something a little bit more cheap. But if you buy a piece of wool and you save, say, $5 a yard, which would be a lot, if it's not suitable for rug hooking, what did you save? You didn't save anything. You not only didn't save, you spent money that you cannot recoup. So stick with the good stuff. Woolrich. Thank you, Linda. That's what I was thinking of. Woolrich is another one. The wool's a little bit cheaper, but it's a little bit cheaper. And I don't want it on my shelf. I want to be able to pull I'm very picky with my wools, And I want to be able to pull every single piece off that shelf and hook with it and not go, oh, that one's for my students, not for me. No, everything on my shelf is what I would personally hook with. If it's not, it ain't there anymore. Annette says, new to rug hooking. Is the wool woven on a loom and then felted? Also, would a number 9 size be used? What would a number 9 size be used for on a design? Could number 9 be used on a background? Thank you. Oh, it's a lot in one question. It's woven in a factory, not by hand, because we want thin threads and we want it tightly woven. It's woven in a factory and then we put it in the washer and dryer, something you would never do with regular wool, right? But that's going to felt it up. I did a lesson on washing it, I think last week, and you can watch that particular lesson. So what would a number 9 be used for? It would be used on a rug that is large enough and simple enough that you can hook with it. Can a number 9 be used on a background? This is where I differ from a lot of rug hooking teachers, and I would say on a number 9 on a background, almost never, unless the rest of the rug is hooked in a 9. I do not subscribe to the notion that you hook your designs in 6s and 8s and then go up to a 9 for the background or fill in the numbers. You never go up for a background. I will stay the same or I will go down in cut size. And the reason for that goes back to this little, where did that go today? Cut sizes illustrated. There we go. It goes back to this thing. So where it says the appearance is velvety when it's a small cut. It's loopy when it's a big cut. So what I want on a background is I want velvet. I want it to disappear. Loopy comes forward and hits me in the face, and I can see loopy. Now, hook it in a number 9, and then put C's and S's in the background, and I cannot stand in front of that rug. I'm sorry, but it bugs me. C's and S's are language. Our brain is designed to pick up language cues, and I can see C's and S's. Now, I don't know if that's because those were my initials before I got married, and so it's very familiar to me. But I do a jigsaw puzzle, and I've got plenty of videos out there about my hooking my jigsaw puzzle background. It confuses the eye. It's never mistaken for a letter. It's just an easier way of hooking your background and hiding your loops, and it'll make your smaller cuts look even more velvety because you can't see the rows. Okay? So basically on cut size, they're based on 32nds of an inch. Pick the one that you're comfortable with, and then pick the one that works for your design. Okay? But definitely start with what you're comfortable with, and then don't go up from there. Go down, because those will be easier on your body and easier to pull. So that's it for anyone watching the replay. Thank you for watching the replay. If you want more of this, you can find that over on CindyGayRugHooking.com or on HowToRugHook.com.